Hey guys, this is Mike. In this video, we're going to do the PC side of the serial communication. So let's just review the code from last time. I've added a header to the... I talked about that in the second part of the serial from the Arduino side, but I only have a 1 byte header here. And just as a reminder, so we're setting up the serial port to talk at this speed. Here I'm setting up a sensor, an input sensor, and on my Arduino I have a light sensor that I'm going to use. You can use a potentiometer or a button or temperature sensor, whatever you want to use, as long as it's analog. And here is where I'm reading my sensor value. Here I'm writing a header of the number 99. And here I'm writing the data of my sensor value. And again, this is weird syntax here, but we're going to use something very much like this on the PC side. All right, so let's go and get started. Open up Orion Dev. The first thing I'm going to do is copy over the drawing text example into my projects. This way we can get text and we can actually see the value of our sensor value. So I'm going to call this serial sensor. Not quite sure what's a good name for that. And go back to open up Orion Dev. And strange place to open me up at. Projects, serial sensor, main.cpp. All right. So let's go ahead and update some of this stuff here. It's the 15th. So, good name here. Read sensor value. Sensor read example. Why not? And read sensor value from Arduino. All right, and sensor value. So all this looks good. Let's just go ahead and run this just to make sure it does what we think it does. It should just say hello world at my cursor. And sure enough it does. Again, the text on here is blurry. It's just because of my virtual machine, but on your computer it should look much better. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to need a couple variables. So the first thing we're going to look for in our data is our header. So we're going to need a value that says that we've either gotten our header and we need to start looking for data, or we haven't gotten our header and we need to be looking for the header. I'm going to make this a Boolean just because there's two options there. We're either looking for a header or we're not. And, you know, that's a great name, actually, got header. I'm going to set it to false because when we start out, we haven't received a header. We've received nothing. And the next thing we need is a variable for our sensor value. I'm going to set this to 0. Now, one downfall of this is that on the Arduino side, our sensor value is an integer, and on the computer side, it's an integer. Now, in a perfect world, this integer would be the same size as this integer. Problem is that on the Arduino, this integer is only 2 bytes, and this integer over here on the computer side is 4 bytes. Now, if we were going from the computer, a bigger integer size, to the Arduino, which is a smaller integer size, we'd be having problems. But since we're going from the Arduino to the PC, there's no problem at all. It's not the best thing to do, but it's fine as long as we set sensor value to 0 every single time we start, or every single time before we read, in case it's bigger than what it should be. But realistically, we should have no problems. So in the setup, the first thing we need to do is set up our serial port. And it's kind of similar to the Arduino, it's a little different. So serial.open with a capital O. And inside of these parentheses and quotes goes your serial port. Now I know mine is COM3, but on your computer it's going to be different. What I like to do usually is just open up the Arduino IDE and go to Tools, then Serial Port. And I only have one serial port, which is the Arduino. If you have more, then you're going to have to figure out which one it is in the device manager. But if you just have one serial port, this is a much quicker way of doing it. So back to Orion Dev. So we've opened the serial port. Now we need to set the speed at which we're talking at. And 57600, just to verify. 57600, 57600, looks good. So now that our serial port's set up, what we need to do is start looking for our data. I'm going to see if we haven't got our headers to start with. So if we haven't gotten our header, if you remember not, the explanation is not, so not got header. That's one way you could do this. There's another way. I prefer the not with the exclamation, but you can also do this. If got header equals false. In fact, I'll just stick with that for now. If we haven't gotten our header, we need to look for the header. Now there's a couple different serial commands on the PC side, and they're a little strange. They're kind of like the Arduino, but they're kind of not. One of them has capital letters, one of them doesn't. It's a little. You're just gonna have to get used to it. So we're going to check to see if we've gotten a byte from the Arduino. We do that by doing if serial.read lowercase r, nothing in the parentheses, equals, and we're going to check to see if it's our header. So in this case, 99. So if that equals 99, we've gotten our header. So got header equals true. So that's all for this part, just for the header. So we're done with looking for the header now. And if this if is checking if we haven't got our header, then an else here would check to see if we got our header. Right? A Boolean only has two options, true or false. If it's true here, it has to be false here. Right? So now this is where it gets a little strange with the with this syntax here, but that's all right. First thing though, I'm going to make a variable called temp. And I'm doing this because when you're reading from a serial port or any sort of communication device, there's a chance that you're going to lose data. And I always like to make sure that I've read in all my data before messing with my value that I'm actually using for my simulation. Always read into a temporary value before actually using anything. So there's my temporary value temp. And we're going to do something similar. If serial.read with a capital R. And then in this parentheses, we're going to write something very similar to what we saw on the Arduino. uint8_t star. This is a memory location in bytes at our temporary value, temp. And then we give it the number of bytes, and we know that the number of bytes is 2, right? So 2. And on the PC side, when you read in bytes like this with reading in multiple bytes at one time, you need to check that you actually got all your bytes. And we do that by just doing equals 2. So if I was going to read in 4 bytes here, I'd check if it equals 4, right? Because that's how many bytes were actually read. Close parenthesis. Now in this if, we're going to do a few things. The first thing I'm going to do is now that I've gotten my data, I know it's good, I'm going to set my sensor value equal to temp. So now sensor value is my sensor value from the Arduino. Whoa, what happened there? Next thing is we need to reset this variable here. We no longer have our header, we've gotten our header already, but we've also gotten the full packet that we're sending. We've gotten everything we've sent, so we need to reset that. It now equals false. And finally, since the serial port on the PC side is a little more, or the code for it is a little different, we need to do serial.input discard with a capital I and an underscore in between. What this does is that anything read with this command, this capital R, it doesn't actually remove it. So you need to do this to actually remove it. So this says, if I've read it, remove it from the buffer, right? And this one does it for you. And I kind of hate to mix these two different ways of doing it, but this one's really easy to use. This one's nicer for if you're sending things with multiple bytes. But in any case, so that's it. We've received data. Now we need to actually show that data somehow on our screen. I'm going to do that in this draw function. So instead of drawing at the mouse coordinates, I'm going to draw at 0, 0 in the middle of my screen. And I should probably update this little comment here. Draw sensor value. Yeah. And here, instead of sending all this junk, I'm just going to print out my sensor value. My sensor value is a number, and to print that out in text, we need to do to_string. That makes it a string of characters. And we just give it the name of our sensor value, which is sensor value. So I think that's it. That's everything. So let's go ahead and compile and run this. I should have been compiling it all through here, but hopefully it compiles and runs. We'll see here. I guess I'm just that awesome because it did. So I have my sensor in front of me. Right now it's just out in front of the light. Say I put my hand over it. You can see the number went down. See it, take it off. Goes back up again. Hand on, off, on, off. So now we have real world data in our simulation. So now you can use this to control a character on the screen or show some sort of simulation with light. A lot of different options. If you had a joystick, you could use this value to control a game character, right? I mean, you could make a gamepad out of an Arduino and make a video game, right? I mean, that's pretty awesome. So that's it for this video. If you guys have any questions, I'll see you in class.